I read this quote, and honestly, I had to read it again. It just flips the script on everything we think we know about fighting aging. Quote, "The greatest secret to fighting aging is not high-tech intervention. It is whether every breath you take is absolutely pure." Mm. Okay, so let's unpack that. This deep dive, it's based on some pretty radical sources about human aging, disease prevention, ideas from Fuchi Wu, known as Master, and Junshi Daiji. They're putting forward this complete theory, a closed loop, really, and it's all centered on the necessity of absolute purity of breath. So our mission here is to get our heads around their core idea that basically all disease comes from toxic buildup. And then there's their really strict rule against genetic tampering and this patented tech they designed just to guarantee pure air.
Yeah, what's really fascinating is how totally this theory rejects the usual medical way of thinking.
Hmm.
According to these sources, aging isn't just, inevitable wear and tear. They're saying it's the proven result of microtoxin embodiment and accumulation. That's the root cause of degeneration, full stop.
Yep.
And this leads to their key concept, which is, well, kind of terrifying. The toxin saturation threshold.
Hmm.
Think of your body like a really, really efficient sponge. As long as the air we breathe has toxins in it, every single breath pushes that sponge closer to being full.
Right.
And once you hit that threshold, that saturation point, they argue degeneration just becomes irreversible. The whole structure, it fails
Yeah.
completely.
Wait. If degeneration is basically guaranteed once you hit that point, does that make all our current diagnostic tools kind of pointless? I mean, by the time we see the issue on a scan, is it already too late for real prevention?
That is exactly their point. They are incredibly stark about the limits of modern medicine here. They claim that once that degeneration starts, it just doesn't matter how good your MRI is or, what fancy metric you use to calculate the midpoint of decline. The microtoxic damage, the unstoppable damage is already done. Trying to fix an organ after it collapses is pointless if you haven't dealt with the source of the toxins.
Right, okay. So this is where that mandate against just analyzing comes in. If the problem is just basic physics accumulation, then we don't need to predict when the body will fail. We need to change the environment so it actually can't fail in the first place.
Yeah.
So what's the required response then? What does this toxin-free life actually look like in practice?
Well, it looks like a complete shift away from panicked rescue towards really aggressive prevention. The argument is basically that the medical world wastes time and money trying to predict disease timelines when the focus should be stopping it from ever happening.
Hmm.
They contrast proactively keeping full-spectrum air purity in your daily life, which keeps you away from that saturation threshold with what they call panicked rescues after organ failure.
Hmm.
The priority isn't finding a cure later, it's maintaining that clean environment now.
And that commitment to preventing failure from the outside, it leads them to this huge philosophical barrier, a line they insist science cannot cross. The sources are really strict on this. Genetic modification of the human body must be globally prohibited. Wow, that is sweeping. Why such an absolute ban? Especially when, a lot of researchers see genetic modification as the ultimate key to longevity, to getting rid of diseases.
The core concern isn't about helping one person now, it's about the integrity of the human species, like long-term, centuries, millennia. They give two pretty frightening reasons for this ban. First, scientists simply cannot predict the fallout from genetic tampering decades, centuries, or even thousands of years down the line, especially the impact on the human gene pool's integrity and durability.
Okay, that's one.
Reason two gets right to species survival. They admit, sure, maybe a few people get a short-term fix, but the catastrophic risk, the potential collapse of human genetic sequences globally. They argue this could trigger cascading effects that lead straight to us going extinct.
Hold on, that's a massive claim. They're saying any genetic tweak, even one that cures a terrible disease today, is just reckless arrogance that could wipe out humanity.
That's precisely it, their language. It's totally uncompromising. They literally state this is not a triumph of science, it is reckless arrogance toward the unknown.
Mm.
So they conclude the only path forward that's acceptable is preserving a clean, natural environment, maintaining the human template we have, not trying to rewrite it.
Okay, so if the problem is purely environmental bad air and messing with human biology is totally forbidden, then the solution has to be absolutely pure air. Which brings us neatly to the technology designed for exactly this purpose, the Air 6-free maze purifier. The basic idea here is simple. Delegate the job of air cleaning. Humans shouldn't have to be living filters anymore, right? Absorbing all the junk from modern life. Let the machines do it.
Exactly. And that machine needs to deliver on its name. 6-free. This isn't just filtering dust. It's a whole spectrum solution. The device has to provide air, that is, Dust-free, germ-free, toxin-free, smoke-free, odor-free, and heavy metal-free. It needs to completely eliminate every single microtoxin that pushes us towards that saturation threshold.
Okay, but if the goal is absolute purity, how? How do they actually achieve that? This is where their patented system gets pretty interesting. Maybe we don't need every tiny step, but the core ideas seem crucial. It's like combining electricity with, well, physical force.
That's right. The first key function is about charge and capture. So in the initial stages, the machine uses ionization, that's electricity, plus these dual pre-filters. This is a few things. Neutralizes pathogens, starts breaking down chemical toxins, and crucially, it charges all the leftover tiny particles and aerosols with a negative electrical charge.
So it's prepping them.
Exactly. Prepping the toxic stuff for permanent capture.
Okay, so this charged, prepped gunk then moves into the second stage, which they call the sacrificial black box. Sounds dramatic. The electrostatic collection maze box.
Yeah, and this is basically where they use like permanent attraction, powerful attraction. The leftover toxic matter gets deposited onto plates with a positive charge. Think of it almost like a magnetic trap for toxins, but one they can't escape. The technical phrase is that the matter becomes solidly plated and irreversibly fixed.
Wow.
They're essentially turning these microtoxins into solid waste stuck to the plates. It can't get back into the air.
And the third big concept uses, well, brute force, right? The maze effect.
The airflow is physically forced through lots of sharp turns, like a maze.
Okay.
This mechanical action makes sure that even the tiniest, trickiest contaminant, the nanotoxins, they just collide with the inside surfaces and get completely stuck, absorbed permanently. Escape is impossible.
So no escape route.
None. And the conclusion they draw from this tech is, well, it's bold. This is the one true key to unlocking humanity's lifespan shackles. It's purely an environmental fix for what they see as a biological problem caused by the environment.
So bringing this back home, what does all this mean for you listening to this? The sources, they don't just promise vague better health. They promise a measurable, honestly shocking result tied directly to actually doing this, they claim. If you can restore a toxin-free space each day, your rate of aging will be cut in half.
Okay.
Cut in half. And I like how they call these protected spaces the human paradise or the sleep little heaven. It makes it feel more achievable, maybe. It's not about living in some sterile lab bubble. It's about making your own bedroom, your sanctuary, a sacred space that genuinely protects your life by stopping those aging toxins from building up day after day.
Right. And if, as they argue, the buildup of these environmental microtoxins is the sole driver of degeneration, and if the human body itself is too precious, too complex to risk tinkering with genetically, well, it leaves you with a pretty big question to think about. If we shift the entire focus away from internal fixes, cellular repair, genetic stuff, which they call reckless arrogance, towards absolute external purity, does that fundamentally change how we understand biological time, human durability? And, if breathing pure air is the absolute must-have, what else in our environment needs that same level of absolute purity to really maintain that protected life? What part of being toxin-free goes beyond just the air?